Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Major League Baseball spring training set to have their first games this weekend. Pitchers and catchers reported, full squads are in action. Getting to hear from a lot of the participants, and we're going to hear from someone who's very entrenched in that. In Jupiter, Florida, it's Jack McMullen from Just Baseball, also of the Marlins radio network. And I saw Jack at spring training yesterday, and so here we are. I'm about 60 or so miles now away from you here. You remain. I'm back in my studio.
Yeah, it's good. I kind of look like I'm in a prison cell right now, but I promise I'm just sitting at an office desk and we're okay. And had to MacGyver this a little bit, but you know what? Such is life in spring training, and I'm ready to go, man. It's starting to smell, sound, and look like baseball, and that is always a recipe for success and overall happiness for yours truly.
Yeah, definitely so. And Jack will be on the radio call starting this weekend for the Marlins as well. But before we get there, we got to get through some of the executives and players talking for the first time. That's what happens when full squads report. A couple of days ago, Jack, the Philadelphia Phillies reported to camp, and they did, in fact, get the very latest from Bryce Harper this offseason. Some comments were made by the president of baseball operations of the Philadelphia Phillies, Bryce Harper, essentially needing to, I don't know, become a lead again. I guess that was like sort of the comment there. Harper was seen working out in a shirt that basically said something about being elite or not. He took it personally, obviously. He said all the right things, I thought, to the media, but let's play some of those comments back for you, and then we'll get your thoughts.
I mean, I don't get motivated by that kind of stuff. You know, for me, it was kind of wild, the whole situation of that happening. I think the big thing for me was, you know, when we first met with this organization, it was, hey, you know, we're always going to keep things in-house, and we expect you to do the same thing. And so, you know, when that didn't happen, kind of took me for a run a little bit. So, I don't know, you know, it's part of it, I guess. You know, it's kind of a wild situation, you know, that even happening. Obviously, I didn't have the year that I wanted. Obviously, I didn't have the postseason I wanted. My numbers weren't where they needed to be. I know that, and you know, I don't need to be motivated to be great, you know, in my career or anything else. So that's just not a motivating factor for me. You know, for Dave to come out and say those things, it's kind of wild to me still.
Was a little strange, Jack, and I would also add this. A little weird offseason for Philadelphia with the Castellanos stuff back and forth, the Harper stuff. They waited a while to sign JT Realmuto. They've got Zach Wheeler coming back from injury. As they say, I'm not sure where the vibes are right now in Clearwater with the Phillies. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, it's weird because the vibes have always been good in Philadelphia. I think over the last couple of years, it seemed like they had a bunch of people that gelled together in a solid way. And, you know, it just seemed like they had a lot of like-minded individuals in that clubhouse and they were working towards a common goal. But, you know, like for full context of that, it kind of started in November or so when Dave Dombrowski was doing his, you know, end of season availability, or it might have been shortly thereafter that. And he said he wasn't sure if Harper was ever going to reach his elite caliber of play again. And that's an interesting thing to say from a lead decision maker about a possible future Hall of Famer, and at this point, likely future Hall of Famer in Bryce Harper. But, you know, Harper taking it personally to the point where he wore a t-shirt and then saying that those things don't motivate him, I thought was a little weird. So that just means that it's pure anger that is associated with this. So I don't know. It's interesting. I thought it was really important for them to retain Schwarber, and they did, because Kyle Schwarber has been kind of the quarterback of that clubhouse. Like, he's always been a leader. He's always kind of set the tone. But you have sort of a changing of the guard here. I also think Philly is just entering a weird point where they had to ditch the Castellanos contract a little bit earlier than they were anticipating. They've got a lot of guys on the other side of 30. JT Realmuto is on the other side of 30 years old, on the older side of 30 years old, and they brought him back on a 3-year deal. So Philly is one of those interesting teams for me where it could be a bit closer to the window closing than I think a lot of people around the league would initially anticipate.
Yeah, and I think without winning a World Series, that really is the key, because they did get close in the postseason, but really never shut the deal down. 89.5 is their season win total to win the East, plus 190 to win the NL, 8-1. To win the World Series, they are 16-1, but this is the lowest win total they've had in several years. Part of it, of course, because of the injury to Wheeler, I would guess as well. That guy's a several WAR player. All right, so big story, a couple of big stories in baseball today. One involving the players union. I want to get to that here when we take a break and come back. I want to get your thoughts on that. But let's go on the field here because the Minnesota Twins, one of those teams, Jack, that had a very peculiar offseason, really are not projected by any of the projection systems to have a good season. May have just been taken is it a death blow to lose this guy? I mean, Pablo Lopez, if he's not their best starter, he's their second best starter. He had some elbow issues yesterday, had an MRI. They're reporting out of Fort Myers today that he's probably going to need Tommy John surgery. I know the Twins weren't going to win the division. I'm not saying that they were, but I mean, Jack, could they be headed for one of the worst seasons with the Twins in a long time with this injury? I don't know how they come back from this one.
I don't know, and it's interesting, and I think we have to start at last year's trade deadline to really assess what the Minnesota Twins will look like in 2026 because they sold off a lot of pieces. They had some really good bullpen arms, and they opt to trade Yohan Duran to Philly. They opt to trade Griffin Jacks to Tampa Bay, and then they send Louis Varland to Toronto, where Varland was one of the best relievers in the MLB postseason in 2025. So they did a fire sale, and really the only people that they held on to that had serious notoriety were Joe Ryan, Byron Buxton, and Pablo Lopez. And you were thinking, okay, are the rest of them going? Is this going to be a total start from scratch rebuild? The answer from ownership and that whole ownership dispute this offseason was no. I mean, we're going to try and, be middle of the pack and compete for a wild card spot. And once you get into that, postseason tournament, really anything can happen. But this is a humongous blow for Pablo Lopez. I know you got to know him during his time in Miami. This is one of the great dudes in Major League Baseball that happens to be one heck of a pitcher as well. So for Pablo, the guy, I feel really bad for him. And for the Minnesota Twins, it just feels like they lack a direction when it was a directionless season and offseason for them in 25 and coming into 26.
A new manager, general manager, president, just so much happening with the Twins. And you're right about Pablo. I always joke that he's the guy that cleans up the stadium after it's all over. That's how nice that guy is. He'll literally do anything to stay in the
Yeah.
game. Twins are 8-1, and I think that this is a sinking ship, unfortunately, for them. Win total, I believe, 73, 74 and a half, lowest it's been in years. Maybe the White Sox catch them, but certainly not going to be a division contender, I don't think. Okay, so the big story since we talked last week, speaking of Philadelphia, is they parted ways with Nick Castellanos, and Castellanos landed very quickly, Jack. I actually was surprised that he landed this quickly with the San Diego Padres. We know that he's going to play, and we know that he's going to hit, but it was going to have to require a special clubhouse to make that fit correct. What do you make of this clubhouse in San Diego, or at least for the time being in Arizona with Castellanos there?
I find their last 4 to 5 days absolutely fascinating because it felt like they were pretty dormant over the course of the offseason. And then all of a sudden, they are on this incredible run of signing minor league free agents or 1 year free agents. In the midst of that, their lead decision maker, the president of baseball operations, AJ Preller, signed a multi-year extension on Monday. So you've got Preller signing an extension, going to grab Herman Marquez on a 1 year deal, going to grab Walker Buehler on a minor league deal, going to grab Ty France on a minor league deal, and sprinkled in there, Nick Castellanos finds a new home in San Diego on a 1 year deal. Nick Castellanos, the first baseman. We're seeing him get some reps at first base. So I find what San Diego's doing absolutely fascinating. I had a feeling that there was going to be a major league team or two that viewed Castellanos as somebody that can play at least against left-handed pitching for the majority of the season in the big leagues. I didn't think that this guy was going to have to settle for a minor league deal because at the end of the day, he is a couple years removed from being a 9-figure outfielder that the Phillies inked. So Castellanos, this is bounce back 101 for him in San Diego. They absolutely need players to bounce back given their roster limitations and given their payroll limitations right now with recent ownership changes. So San Diego is on an absolute heater right now.
Yeah, minor league and major league mini heater. That's fair. In this hot stove that's ending. All right, we'll ask Jack about this Tony Clark news with the Major League Baseball Players Association. Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Jack McMullen joining us, Just Baseball show coming up in about 15 minutes from now, so stay on the grid for that. Now, one of the things that may not be discussed on that show is the breaking news that we had just about a couple hours ago here, Jack, which certainly can't be viewed well for the Players Association. I mean, make no mistake about it, regardless of how you feel about Tony Clark, he has been the head of the Players for 15 years. And today, in a season where it's supposed to be binding the players together where there's going to be a potential CBA, break here at the end of the season, Clark announces that he's going to step down, or I don't know if he's announced it. It's been being reported that he's going to step down. So they'll have someone interim. Naturally, the players are being asked about this. They're all sort of shocked as well. I don't know any other way to view this, Jack. Like, I think the players in the end, and I'm hopeful that the players and the owners come together and work something out. But if you're sort of keeping score at home, I would have to imagine, even though Major League Baseball's owners aren't going to comment and say anything about this, they have to be looking at this like, okay, this is one that we're that is in our corner, I guess, if it's some sort of battle.
Yeah, and I guess I'm waiting for like the tell-all article from somebody that understands it a heck of a lot better than I do as to how this pertains to the upcoming labor agreement expiration at the beginning of December after this 26 season. So it's just a weird time for this to happen. But Passan reported, and you saw that on the tweet, that this is in the midst of ongoing investigation about financial improprieties with the Players Association. So you have to assume that that played some sort of a factor. I saw Marcus Semien was asked about that at Mets camp in Port St. Lucie earlier today, and he said it has to be something along the lines of that because in terms of the labor conversation with the commissioner's office and everything, he felt like Tony Clark was the perfect guy to do that because of how long he has been in that role. You mentioned it's been 15 years for Tony Clark in that role, so for this to happen now, it was just really weird when he is at the center of the baseball universe. It does, like, I would love to be able to focus on baseball and the players, but Tony Clark and Commissioner Manfred are two of the biggest pieces, two of the main characters in the 2026 MLB season.
Yep, without a doubt. We'll be talking a lot about that in the summer and even into the fall and beyond. All right, so back to the field we
Yeah.
go. Let's talk about the one major free agent that was still left out there last week and ended up signing a 1-year deal in Zach Gallen. He returns to Arizona, and knowing Zach the way that I do, Jack, from his time here in Miami, you can always
Right.
appreciate his candidness and honesty when it came to this sort of stuff, where he basically said, looking back on it now, maybe the qualifying offer was what he should have essentially done. I mean, you don't hear players say that a lot, but he has always been really honest and forthright, even in the media as well. I suppose that this could, in my opinion, Jack, work out maybe better than any offseason deal because Gallen's a pitcher. He's still very young. If he has a great year, he's going to square off against the Dodgers a lot and really good teams out west. There could be a huge payday for him at the end of the season. He said he had multi-year deals, but I kind of feel like maybe being back where he had his most success as a big leaguer could really help him down the line.
Given what he signed for, you would assume that those multi-year deals were in the two for $30 million range, and he viewed a one for $22 million offer as, the best thing for him. And I too love the candidness from him, saying he probably should have just signed the qualifying offer. There were a couple of things that intrigued me about Gallen's free agency. He was the guy where it felt like it was the most delicate, the qualifying offer saga with him because of what the contract year actually looked like. And we often see guys put together their best year during a contract year when they enter free agency and they can really get paid because there are some financial implications there. Gallen had the worst healthy year of his career, really, since the very, very beginning in his walk year. So I was always going to be fascinated as to what type of contract he actually got on the open market this offseason. The other thing is, I think the draft pick attached to guys that are extended the qualifying offer and don't take it was really something that impacted his free agency. If he were to sign somewhere else, the Diamondbacks were going to get a pick at the end of the first round, and this would have forfeited a comp pick for the team that signed him. So I really don't know if there was, too much incentive to forfeit a draft pick for a 2-year, $30 million deal for Zach Gallen. So if he had those offers, really cool, but I think it's going to work out for him going back to a place where he's supremely comfortable.
Agreed. All right, we got Merrill Kelly, by the way, going to start opening day for the
Yeah.
Diamondbacks, and I think that's probably the right move given what was going on with Gallen. But here are some of the opening day starters in baseball. We've got Kelly for Arizona. Garrett Crochet gets the call for the Red Sox. The Astros named Hunter Brown their opening day starter. And the Marlins have named Sandy Alcantara the opening day starter there. In fact, he has more opening day tenure than any of those names on the list. starting for the 6th time. So naturally, we know a lot can change between now and opening day, Jack, but I think that very well placed decisions, I think, by all teams. Red Sox could have went a couple of different ways, but I think in the end, these were the best ideas for them.
100%. Yeah, and Garrett Crochet is one of the brightest young stars in Major League Baseball on the mound. The two that intrigue me, Sandy Alcantara starting his 6th opening day for the Marlins is really cool because I think you look at the baseball reference page and you see the season long numbers and you say, oh, it was a bad year for Sandy. There's a lot of context missing in those full season stats. I think for Sandy Alcantara, the way he finished in the final 6 to 8 starts that he made is really encouraging, and you get to see this reinvigorated Sandy Alcantara get the ball on opening day on that Friday night. The other one that jumps out to me is Hunter Brown in Houston, because for me, this is a changing of the guard for the Houston Astros. Justin Verlander was their guy for several years. Framber Valdez was their guy for several years. And now you make the pivot to acknowledging Hunter Brown as the clear-cut, undeniable ace of the Houston Astros. It is no longer Framber's rotation. It is no longer Verlander's or Garrett Cole's. Hunter Brown is the star of the show in the Space City, and he's got complementary pieces in Tatsuya Imai and Christian Javier and Mike Burrows, but it's Brown's show.
Jack, as always, great to catch up with you here on NewsWire. What's coming up here on Just Baseball?
We've got a lot of good stuff. We're flying around the headlines, and we're going to talk about that Preller extension and what San Diego is doing right now, trying to thread the needle in San Diego.
Jack, I'll see you this weekend. Thanks for coming on NewsWire. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Appreciate you, Craig.